Hey guys, welcome back to another one. This is going to be a quick update on some words from a meeting from the Treasury Secretary Yellen, just talking about stablecoins and cryptocurrency in general. I think news, good, bad, or indifferent, is always good for cryptocurrency, but this one is Yellen talking about our stable current coins and what to do for the future. So quickly looking over this article real quick, the nation's top financial regulators met on Monday to discuss stablecoins, with the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen emphasizing the need to act quickly to ensure there is an appropriate U.S. regulatory framework in place for these digital assets. So essentially, there is no 100% regulation in set stone right now. I think over the past year or two, cryptocurrency has kind of caught our regulators, unsurprised by surprise, and they're now trying to play catch up a little bit, just to make sure that there is some sort of regulation in place, so that people, they don't necessarily get used and abused by cryptocurrencies in the future, in particular stablecoins, because here's this paragraph right here. Critics say stablecoins pose a threat to financial stability because investors use them as cash substitutes, but they remain lightly regulated, unlike similar products like bank deposits or money market mutual funds. So, like they're alluding to, the banks, they have a bunch of regulations that they have to abide by, whereas stablecoins, aside from the company saying, they're pegged to the dollar and they're backed in full by the dollar, they don't have that full regulation. So if we look at the fractional reserve banking system, we can kind of get a look at, the differences in banking systems. So right now, in theory, some of these stable coins are saying for every one stable coin that they have one equal US dollar sitting, somewhere in a vault. And that's like the 100% reserve banking system. And to look at that just real quick, there's the website quickonomics.com. It explains it really well. To explain the idea behind the fractional reserve system, you'll have to look at the opposite, the 100% reserve banking system. In this system, banks are required to hold all deposits as reserves. So if for some reason every single member of ABC Bank deposited, all of their money, that bank is called Super Safe Bank, has to hold all that money. They're not going to do any lending on the back end and make money off of your money. They're just going to hold it all. So that's kind of like, in theory, what some people think is going on with some of these stable coins. For every $1 that there is behind a stable coin, or for every one stable coin, there should be $1 if it's tied or pegged to the US dollar. Where on the other hand, the fractional reserve banking system is what most of our banks will do. So, on the other end, let's read this real quick. So for the sake of the example, let's now assume that Super Safe Bank has $100 million in its vault. Most of the money is just sitting there. Of course, there must always be some reserves for customers who want to make withdrawal. However, if the flow of withdrawals is roughly the same as the cash flows of new deposits, it's not necessary for the bank to keep all the deposits as reserves. Instead, we can use some of them to make loans to people who need money to buy a house, new car, go to university, and that's what we call the fractional reserve banking system. So it all depends on the country, but in most countries, the fraction of total deposits that banks need to keep as reserve, the reserve ratio, is regulated by the government and or bank policies. So yeah, the 10%, I've heard that quite a bit. So banks only need to keep about 10% of the cash that they receive on hand on a daily basis, which is kind of crazy. So that other 90%, they're loaning out for mortgages, they're loaning out for, car loans, and so on and so forth. So they're making money off of your money, 90% of the money that the bank receives. Tether is something that has been brought up a couple times, and people are a little worried about Tether because it's USDT, which is the most common cryptocurrency. And there was a little bit of scares in the past about what if, even though the website right here says it's 100% backed it used to say 100% backed by US dollars, but since then they have shifted to backed by our reserves. So, and they even say it includes traditional currency, cash and equivalents, and from time to time other assets. And even more recently, they came out with the breakdown of what they do hold. So if we look at this, they do have a bunch of cash and cash equivalents, or so they say, secured loans, corporate bonds, and other investments as this big, circle chart. And then if we break down the 75%, we can see that most of it is something called commercial paper. And they don't break down what commercial paper is anymore. Hopefully that's some sort of dollar or something they can convert to a dollar really easily. But who knows? It could be stocks. It could be anything. So Tether is a concern for Janet Yellen and other regulators because they don't know what the stablecoin is backed by. It could be, cash and cash equivalents to the US dollar, or it could be something that's not, backed by the US dollar, and they're just printing a bunch of these coins with not sufficient backing. And that could just lead to a huge disaster in the future, potentially. And that's kind of what the regulators, circling back to the very first article, are worried about, and they want to make some regulation behind. So we'll see what happens in the future, but just wanted to pass that little bit of news to you. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.